Hey, we're doing the thing. I think. Double check. See if we're doing the thing. I think we're doing the thing. We're doing the thing. Yeah, that's more than I think is needed. It's pretty good. That'll have to do. The cord on this controller isn't quite long enough for me to sit back without worrying I'm going to pull this thing off of the table, which I would rather not do. So this is what you're getting, and you're getting Eric Allen.
Hello.
Hey, there he is.
Hey, what's up, Joe?
Not much. We're streaming. We're streaming
Oh,
Ghostlop.
Sorry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ghostlop is an unreleased Neo-Geo game.
Okay. How do you lop a ghost?
It's very similar to the way you bust a groove, or bust a move, apparently. Or puzzle some baubles, if that grabs you. So, yeah, I just got my Neo-Geo. I actually went through two MV1B boards, and the one I have now is an MV1C, and it works, as you can see.
That's nice.
In fact, I can turn the camera.
Third time is the charm, I suppose.
You can see it there.
Ugh.
Yeah, third time turned out to be the charm. So,
And contacting a more reliable source.
yes. Hot tip: buy things from acquaintances on communities that you're a part of, and not just from like rando eBay people.
Well, buy used electronics from people that you trust.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why this game went unreleased. But I know that it did. So this is yeah, a very puzzle bobble-ish puzzle game. But you can move your little guy around, so it's sort of like
What
Buster.
are those guys supposed to be?
They're ghost hunters of some, or ghost busters, for want of a better term.
They look like jockeys
Yeah, they kind
playing
of do.
underhand pitch softball.
Yeah, right.
And those are ghost testicles.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, so you're I guess supposed to be some sort of ghostbuster, and you have to bounce the. So it's like, man, it's sort of like it's sort of like Bust a Move meets Buster Bros meets Arkanoid, because you can't let the ball, if the ball drops, then as you can see what happened there, the stage moves down one. Yeah, don't drop the ball. So if the, which is not good, so now I have to continue. There are people all up in the chat right now, and I'm trying to play a puzzle game that requires paying attention. You should read what's in the chat. I'm gonna say.
Smoke Monster says, looks like Luigi's Mansion. Luigi meets Magical Drop.
Yeah, it's got more of a it's a little more puzzle bobble than Magical Drop, I think, but go for all the ghosts.
Get them ghosts.
I will, because bustin' makes me feel good. Oops. So yeah, the more that you can sort of drop at once, if you can drop a whole bunch of ghosts in one shot, you can drop garbage ghosts on your opponent, which can be cleared with either color. So the way this works is that A fires the red ball and B fires the B ball, or the blue ball.
I was just about to ask that because I was curious.
Yeah. A is red, B is blue, and the garbage ghosts, which are the skulls, they will go away with 2 hits from any color, but you have to hit them twice.
Okay.
Or drop them by comboing something above them. So yeah.
Smoke Monster says that he meant the character sprite was.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Was the magical drop part.
Coot says they just used a photo of a street as the backdrop. Yeah, it looks like most of the backgrounds are kind of that. Like this is just a picture of a graveyard.
Yep. Yep. Apparently now I'm facing off against Jack Skellington's dog, in not quite puzzle bobble.
Will this have been before?
This was slated, I believe, to be a relatively late game in the system cycle. But I don't remember off the top of my head what the year is. So you can change the color of the ball in midair, but I haven't quite mastered the timing on how to, like, easily get... get around.
Right, you want to, like, hit a thing and then change it when it ricochets. And then...
Right. But I haven't quite mastered the timing for that yet. But there's actually a pretty surprising shortage of appropriate games for this system. There's Ghostlop, which again, this is an unreleased game, and I'm going to do some Nightmare in the Dark in a little bit. And I might do Ghost Pilots, which is actually not about ghosts and more about pilots. But there's really not. I mean, maybe Mutation Nation is like has like some Cronenberg type body horror stuff with people like turning into like goo monsters. Ugh. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked about this whole having a Neo-Geo thing. I've wanted a Neo-Geo for a very long time. And I finally have one. Oh, this dog is fucking me up in Ghostlop.
I mean, that's AI in puzzle games, right?
Yeah, I suppose. The first opponent's always super easy, and then all the subsequent ones are annoyingly hard.
So this game was slated to be released in '96.
Okay, so that's like mid. Like the last official release was in I think 2004. So I guess that's early to mid. This system also had like an extremely long lifespan. 1990 to I think 2004. Like I said, was the last official release.
I can't imagine, were they still regularly releasing stuff in like 2000?
No, it was like I think by that point it was basically like a new King of Fighters. You know, if you look at the release list, the end of the cycle it's pretty Spartan. It's like, you know, Samurai Showdown 6 and, you know, King of Fighters 2003, 2004, and Capcom versus SNK, SVC Chaos, you know, that type of stuff. But it's not like the first couple of years. It's like there's a lot of stuff coming out for it, and then, I mean, let's put it this way: for a system that had that long of a lifespan, it actually has like a pretty small library. I think there's about 170-ish official releases. There's really, you know, I mean, I think it's probably got a pretty, you know, for a software library, the ratio of good games to bad on the Neo-Geo is probably quite a bit better than on most systems, even though the raw numbers, you know, this system doesn't have a ton of stuff. Yikes. Mike said something about me suffering from sound shock, which I don't know if that's a commentary on the audio quality of the stream, or if that's just a joke about the 100 mega shock of the Neo-Geo. But if it is a problem with the sound on the stream, he should be more specific about that, because I will make adjustments as needed.
I think he was just making a joke.
Okay.
That's why you're losing to the dog. To the god.
Sure.
The dog. The god dog.
I mean, that makes a good deal of sense. So I saw you played some Monster Party on, was that last night?
Mm-hmm.
How was Monster Party hold up? Still real weird? Like, kind of good, but kind of not that good, but
It's
kind of charming?
Yeah, it is definitely long on charm. It is very creepy when the world shifts from smiley blocks to like bleeding skulls and stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, it played all right. We did some. The fact that there's only one life and no continues kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Real rough. Or when you die, you have to start all over at the beginning of the levels, and the levels are pretty long. Mike and I did some. We did some level skipping, and the final level appears to be some sort of maze level.
Yeah.
It was kind of rough.
Yeah. Those any NES game that has a maze level, even the maze levels in Super Mario Brothers are like
Nope, they're not
sort of
great.
needlessly frustrating.
Yeah.
until the Super Nintendo version of Super Mario Brothers added like a chime that told you when you went the right way.
Yeah. I think that the discrepancy between the power level between the kid and the bird monster,
Bert, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of it's a little tough to navigate.
So there are some exploits in that game because some of the power ups are like always the same. So if you can respawn the monsters like kind of continuously, like you can always get a monster pill.
Is that how that works? So we were trying to
Yeah.
figure that out last night because it seems like something that would make more sense if there was like a cooldown for swapping between the kid and the monster because like the game is incredibly impossibly difficult when you play as the kid and it is really ridiculously easy when you play as the monster.
Yeah. Well, the kid has some stuff that's kind of useful. So one thing about that game,
He can ricochet bullets and stuff
he
with his
can
baseball bat.
yeah, he also, if you hold the B button, if his bat is just sticking out, it still does it does damage like every other frame or something ridiculous like that. So like there's a lot of enemies that if they have big hitboxes, you can just kind of stick your bat out and like leave it out and kind of do a bunch of damage that way, which is a little silly if we're being totally honest, but you know it.
Yeah, it still seems like the monster's range sort of just kind of makes most of the boss fights that I tried it with anyway is pretty easy because most of them can't really deal with that. But I think it's cool, like just the novelty of having the sheer volume of boss fights that there are in that game is kind of neat. But
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I enjoyed the story quite a bit.
Yeah. Were you able to actually beat the final level or no?
No, we
Because
didn't.
the ending is
I only played
pretty
for like 20 minutes
fucking
or whatever.
insane.
But in order to get through that maze, I think I would have had to either follow an FAQ right from the beginning or like a map. But yeah, it's all right. It's one of those. That's definitely one of those Nintendo games that's weird and kind of cool, but also
Yeah.
has quite a few flaws as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one that you kind of feel the age, but part of feeling the age means that like I don't want to say a game like that would never come out today because that's a hard thing to say in this day and age because so much weird stuff is in indie games, but like no game like that would get
together kind of.
Yeah, no game like that I think would get a retail release today. Let's say that. I mean, that game is just so off the wall that.
Well,
You know.
I mean, it's the no games that are that small in scale get retail releases.
Right.
You know, there's probably a ton of games that are like that on Steam, but
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, no major publisher is going to release the equivalent of a modern day. Because, like, that was Bandai, who, you know, obviously is now part of Namco.
yeah, I mean, like Ubisoft and EA and stuff have put out some weird indie stuff from their internal labs sometimes. Not indie stuff, but weird small stuff like Grow Home and I don't know I forget what that puzzle game was, but
I'm going to change games here in a second because this is starting to be more frustrating than fun. And looking at the same cemetery background is...
yeah, this is...
Oh, I like the cat that sleeps on the timer, though. I don't think I noticed that until just now. The black cat that's sitting on top of the... did you do anything on Saturday?
I played Ghost House for like 10 minutes.
Ghost House. Which...
For the the Master System.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
The one with the incredible box art.
Yep.
Because it's one of the game cards.
It's one of the My Card, Sega My Card or whatever.
I don't know. Have you ever played Ghost House before?
I have. That's the
That's
one...
right.
Yeah, that's the one where you have to kill Dracula. There's many Draculas. You have to kill as many
you kill
Draculas.
a lot of fucking Draculas in that game, yeah.
And then the Draculas give you a knife or something, and you
No,
can't
you have to
remember.
jump on the knife.
Or you jump on the knife.
The enemies you hit a candelabra.
Uh-huh.
There's like traps, and so sometimes I think it's when you go by a fireplace, an arrow will shoot at you, and if you touch a
Right, and if you
candelabra,
jump on the arrow, then
you can jump on the knives or the arrows to get them and use them. And then you're basically useless without the knife. But the knife, you can take out Dracula's pretty fast, but it's like it feels kind of endless. Like you're just kind of like endlessly running around in the maze, killing Draculas and jumping on knives. And after about 10 minutes, you kind of see pretty much everything.
See what all there is to offer.
Yeah. I don't know. I booted it up and then I was like, I know how this game works, and I really don't know how but maybe I played it a bunch when I was a kid at my neighbor's house, so I don't know if there was. I don't think they had the super card reader thing, so it must be.
Oh, it's the original.
Too.
No, the original Master System, the first model, had the card slot in it.
Right.
Yeah,
because the cards were supposed to be like
they were cheap games,
like small and cheap, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
There was the same card. Well, in Japan, the system was backwards compatible with the I think with the SG-1000, and that was the card format games. That was how the SG-1000 games were. That's the format that they came in. So yeah, that was the card slot was retained for the US Master System, but it was also used for the 3D glasses. That's where you plugged them in.
Right. Okay.
Oh, come on. Yeah, you plugged the 3D glasses into the card slot, which is why a lot of people don't like the Master System 2 model, because it doesn't have the card slot, so you can't use the. If you're really into the idea of using the 3D glasses, you can't do that.
Because they are fucking terrible.
So. Alright, hey, I beat the dog. Let's see who the next opponent is. There's a ghost in Randy's room. He lives on 3rd Street. Jennifer, the actress, has a ghost in her house. Okay, Randy the kid or Jennifer the actress?
Jennifer the actress.
Jennifer the actress. Okay, McCoy's going to Randy's house. No, it's the
Actually,
Tasmanian devil.
The best thing about Monster Party is the duck animation.
Yeah?
Where the kid just lays on the ground like a slug and then wiggle around when you move.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So apparently this is the ghost of the Tasmanian devil, but they're calling it a poltergeist. And Jennifer, the actress, has gigantic boobs because, it's a video game from 1996.
Wow, you done fucked him up pretty fast.
Yeah, no kidding. Come on.
So what's the number one most what's the game you are most excited to bust out now that you have a actual Neo-Geo to play games on?
I mean, you don't believe that it's Ghostlop? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I don't know. This game seems pretty cool, actually. But
I don't know.
When I think of Neo-Geo, the first thing that always pops, it's always just all the fighting games, which is why I was never that interested in it, because I don't really care that much about fighting games. But
I mean, there's some of the fighting games that I do really enjoy. But like of the fighting games, like Real Bout Fatal Fury Special is one that I'm looking forward to playing on an actual Neo Geo. I'm actually probably, because it has not been available again ever. It's never been reissued. The version of Super Dodgeball, which was one of if not the final game from Technos. And like Capcom versus SNK, even though like it's not as good as the ones that Capcom made. Like Capcom made the Capcom versus SNK, and SNK made SNK versus Capcom.
Mm-hmm.
And the Capcom ones are, a lot. I mean, Capcom versus SNK 2 is probably my favorite 2D fighting game of all time. But the SNK interpretation is interesting, even if it's not as good.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's actually a couple like Sengoku 3, which is like a later era.
Play some real ass Windjammers next time we're hanging out. I think that's
yeah.
the thing I'm most excited for.
Yeah, coming over and playing Windjammers.
Mm-hmm.
I can see
yeah, that's like Fatal Fury and
yeah,
Metal Slug, Samurai Showdown.
Yeah, the Metal Slug 1 through 5.
Yeah,
I like all of those. There's a action platforming ninja game that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head now. It starts with a G. I've never actually played very much of it, but that's supposed to be good.
Now you can.
Now I can. So yeah, Sengoku 3, Shock Troopers 1. Shock Troopers 2 is okay, but I think Shock Troopers 1 is better. It looks better. Oh no, I'm going to the kids' house anyway. Bob and Mary have ghosts in their room. Mary looks like she has the creepy clown doll from Poltergeist, so I'll go there.
No, don't go there.
I wonder if you play 2 players, if you get to choose from all these weird ass ghosts, or if you just play as like the 2 Ghostbusters. But yeah, I don't know. There's such a big library, and there's so many 3 Count Bout. I think I might have mentioned that already. Like I downloaded that from the eShop a while ago. I did a video about it earlier this year. But that's pretty cool. Oh, you know what? Actually, the other game that I might play to some of tonight is King of the Monsters. Because that is...
It's got monsters.
That is a seasonally appropriate selection, of course.
Because if there's one thing I know about monsters, it's that they love the autumn leaves.
That's right. So we're gonna switch games. That was fun.
Well, yeah, that looked like kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, we're gonna
kind of a cool take on
the falling orb puzzle subgenre. Yeah. So the nice thing about, I got the Darksoft flash cart, and it lets you sort of make a fake 3-slot MVS. So the board I have is obviously a 1-slot MVS. I don't have a need to have 4 slots or 6 slots. The 6 slots are also, I guess, prone to failure.
Sure, I mean, that's way too many slots. So.
Right. The 4 slots are generally considered to be reliable, but again, like, I don't need something that big. I don't need, I'm playing this at home. I'm not loading up an actual arcade cabinet.
Right.
So, it's nice that it will load 3 games into the flash memory, though, so I can switch between them as you just saw me do. Very easily, which is nice, because the Terra Onion flash cart, I guess, doesn't do that. You have to load like you can only load one game at a time, and then you have to wait quite a while to for it to actually load up. So Nightmare in the Dark is interesting. It was made by 11, and it's basically like imagine if Snow Bros was a horror themed thing, but like it was still Snow Bros. That's what Nightmare in the Dark is.
Okay.
As you can see, I throw fire at these guys, and they turn into big balls of fire, which I then throw down the stage to try to take out the other enemies, and like that's the whole thing. So it's an interesting take. I mean, thematically, I'm more into this than I am Snow Bros.
Yeah, that's for kids.
Yes.
This is for real gamers who've got fire and mummies in it.
Totally. I mean, I do love fire and mummies, so. But yeah, it's weird. It's weird to me that a game. So this is an MVS only game. There was never a home version of this released. You can, using this flashcard, I can force it to boot in home system mode if I'm so inclined, but I don't know that there's a reason to do that, but I can. But yeah, it's really weird that this sort of like single screen, this kind of bubble bobble Burger Time style of game someone made a new one of these
It looks very nice.
in 1999 or 2000.
I feel really bad for those skeletons. It looks like somebody reassembled them, but just like said fuck it and left the rib cages off.
Well, they needed the spare rib cages for Mortal Kombat 3. So that's where all the extra rib cages came from. I think there's more stuff in the chat, but I'm trying to fight a giant Frankenstein monster, so.
Senile Coot says, I showed Windjammers to a friend of mine, and we ended up playing for hours. Neo-Turf Masters is quite fun, too.
I'm just not a golf game guy. I know that people really like Neo-Turf Masters.
Mike says, well, whatever this console is, it looks pretty neat. Weird that you didn't say anything about it to lead up to the stream. So.
Yeah, I know.
If only we'd known that you were going to stream some Neo-Geo games at some point.
So I went to see a bunch of horror movies on Saturday night, which is why I didn't stream on Saturday night or last night. Because I was at the movies on Saturday night, I think, when you streamed, and I was asleep last night when you streamed, I think, already. So, oof.
So what movies did you see?
So I ended up seeing, well, let's see, there were 7 of them, so give me a second here. Halloween 3 was the first movie, which I think was completely expected from almost everybody, because the advertising for this event was very heavily Halloween 3 inspired. And in fact, I'm wearing my shirt that I got from the thing that's got the kids wearing the Halloween 3 masks.
Okay.
On it. So it was very heavily, like the trailer for it used the Silver Shamrock jingle, and I mean it was.
Yeah, you had said that before, like when we talked about that you were going, because you said you thought that it would be very Halloween 3 centric.
Yeah, so they just started with that to not make anybody sort of, I mean, that just...
At least, right, if you showed up, you got at least something that was watchable off the bat.
Right.
So that way when the next movie was Blood Feast or whatever, you feel comfortable leaving.
Man, I gotta tell you, there's one movie that I much rather would have sat through Blood Feast again. But we'll get there. The second movie was... now I'm trying to remember what we rolled into right away. I don't...
Made quite an impression, whatever it was.
Well, they all made an impression. I'm just trying to remember the order they went in at this point. Was the second movie... Like, I kind of think it was Amityville 2, The Possession, but I don't think that... No, oh, Jesus, no. It did make a big impression. The second movie was Devil Fetus, actually.
Oh, hell yeah.
Are you familiar with Devil Fetus?
I'm familiar with Devil Fetus.
Okay.
I've never seen all of Devil Fetus, but there are some clips of Devil Fetus that are, like, infamous.
Right. Like, which ones? Which clips are you?
Like the one where he fights the priest. There's
Yeah.
a battle against a priest who can do some magic. There's like a part where he eats some dog guts, right?
Yes.
Gets possessed and eats dog guts, and then there's like the ending is famous.
Yeah. So at the end, for those who are not familiar with this film...
Right. Well, I mean, you should set up what Devil Fetus is.
Well, right. So they said
that... As I understand it, there isn't... The plot of Devil Fetus is not...
non-existent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they told us that it might be the most expensive screening in Belcourt history because the print is pretty rare. And I mean, in fact,
makes sense in a way.
So it was an AGFA owned print, the American Genre Film Association, which is partnered or now owns Something Weird. Like, that's all tied together. And AGFA, I guess there was a shipping snafu, and like this was a 35mm print, so it was like it's not easy to ship, and so they didn't like go into details, but they were just like, yeah, this might be the most expensive screening we've ever had, just because of the shipping issue that we had getting it here. But it was a Canadian print of Devil Fetus that I'd never heard. I'd never heard of this movie before Saturday night. But apparently the Canadian, because it was a Canadian print and not like a Chinese or a Hong Kong print, it was like, it was weirder, gorier, whatever than the actual, Hong Kong version. Came out. Yeah. So, but the subtitles were not very good, which was a little frustrating. I mean, it kind of added to the experience, I guess, if I'm being honest about it. But it was like, now see, there's two enemies on top of each other, and I feel like I can't. There we go. So. It had like a weird pink tint to a lot of it. Like, I don't know if that's not vinegar syndrome necessarily, but something was. But the subtitles weren't great. I believe the movie was in Mandarin with both Cantonese and English subtitles. But so from what I can parse, the movie is about. It's about this family. Well, I know it's about this family, and this family is like. They're pretty wealthy, especially by this. I mean, you can tell by the size of the house they live in Hong Kong, which is filled to the brim with high-rise apartment buildings. But these people live in like a reasonably large home, and it's like the grandmother, mom and dad, and aunt and two kids all live in this house together. And you find out that the reason that the aunt is there is because her husband, who is the dad's brother, he's like away on like a 6-month-long business trip. So the movie opens, they're at like an auction, and she buys this vase because like the vase has a little demon carved into the side of it, and it like looks at her and winks at her. So she decides she has to have it. So she pays $2,500 for this vase. And she takes it home, and like there's this moment where, okay, so the vase kind of looks like a dildo. And it's a very phallic looking vase.
Tell me more.
And she's laying in bed with this vase. And I'm like, is she going to fuck the vase? Like, is she going to rub one out with the vase? And the answer is yes, kind of. So what happens is, she lays down in bed with the vase, and then she's like fucking this demon, right? Like, and the demon is like, it's like the cheapest, shittiest Swamp Thing makeup that you can imagine. It's like if someone with no budget decided they were going to go as Swamp Thing for Halloween, that's what this like practical makeup effect looks like. And it's just like kind of like not that the sex with the demon has to be sexy or anything, but like it might be the most unerotic love scene ever committed to film. Like,
I mean, she's having sex with a demon.
But she's just like kind of laying there, and the demon is like, it's like missionary, and the demon is just sort of like gyrating its hips in her, like it's
boring demon sex is,
yeah.
Like, that's the
like you would
ultimate.
think if you're summoning a demon and you're gonna fuck it, it's gonna be wild, right? I mean, anytime you watch a movie with like a succubus or something, and like the succubus seduces a dude, it's like the most wild, amazing, you know what I mean? Like, it's either kinky or it's just very, whatever. This was just the most boring, rote, perfunctory sex scene, that you could have. And so she starts acting a little weird, and she's kind of treating her nephews worse than she, like, it's established that she really like loves her nephews, and she always brings them stuff and whatever else. And she stops doing that, and they take the vase at one point, and she gets really mad at them. Well, so her husband comes home, I guess unexpectedly, from this like 6-month-long business trip. And he comes home, and she's fucking the demon when he comes home. And when he comes in the door, the demon turns back into the vase like immediately. And so she's just sort of clutching the vase, and he gets really pissed off, and he smashes the vase on the floor. And then he starts to like mutate, and his face kind of starts to melt because I guess he let the demon out of the vase or something. And so he sees himself in the mirror, like he's like, oh no, I'm like melty faced now. I'm hideous. And so he jumps out the window. So he's dead. And he's had like 2 minutes of screen time. Like, he comes home and he commits suicide immediately. So then we go to his funeral happens, and it's like a very full blown funeral. And the night of his funeral, she hears his voice in the hallway, and she goes out to look for him. And this cat that we've never seen before, like hisses at her and like jumps out of nowhere and kills her, drop kicks her off the landing, like down to the first floor. It's sort of amazing. And so now she's dead, and they like smash cut. Oh, so we never see the cat again. So like, I didn't thought for a second, like, is that a family cat, or like, no, it's just a cat that is there for 1 second and kills her and then disappears. So then they smash cut back to the funeral altar, and now it's like his picture and her picture are on the funeral altar. And the Buddhist priest tells the grandmother, like, okay, I'm gonna do her. I'm gonna set her up so that she's her soul is wandering because she wasn't supposed to die yet. So we need. I'm gonna leave this like little altar for her with these stones and one of those sort of prayer ward sheets that I don't know the name of. It's a Buddhist thing that the Chinese ghosts have on their heads. He leaves it, and he's like, but, if you want her to reach her next reincarnation, she'll be wandering. Her spirit is going to wander for 12 years, and then she'll reincarnate again. But you can't move these stones or this like ward until that happens. So don't move these rocks for 12 years. Is basically the requirement here, right? So some time passes, and the nephews are like, they're teenagers. They're like in high school, and the older brother is really good at kendo. He wins kendo competitions all the time. And
just like me.
Right, sure. And something happens where this girl comes to stay with them, and they say it's your aunt's daughter, which would imply it's their cousin. And I'm going to say that I guess by aunt they just mean like some close family friend or something, because otherwise this dude is 100% trying to bone his cousin, and that ain't cool. I think by 1983 we'd all pretty much come to the agreement that like banging your cousin ain't okay.
I don't know what's going on in Hong Kong, man. Be anything.
I mean, I guess you're not wrong, but so whatever is going on, whether it's his cousin or whatever, they go into they have like this family is like opulently wealthy. They have this gigantic house, so they go into they have a prayer room, like an altar and a prayer room in their house, and this girl moves the stones, so
of course.
So the aunt's spirit is now free to move about as it likes, but it's not really the aunt's spirit, it's the devil fetus she was impregnated with. I'm just credit feeding my way right through this fucking game at this point. It's the devil fetus that the demon impregnated her with. These boss fights are just ridiculous. The priest at her funeral saw the devil fetus, and that's why he put the magic rocks, on her altar and everything, so that the devil fetus wouldn't get loose. But now the devil fetus is loose, and first it possesses the family dog. And so then the dog attacks the older brother and the girl. And the older brother kills the dog with a katana. And then the younger brother goes to bury the dog, but instead of burying the dog, he actually takes the dog back home and puts it under his bed where he keeps it, and like you said, he eats some dog guts, and he's possessed now by the devil fetus. And he starts acting like a real dick. There's a part where he like rapes and murders their maid, but like nobody apparently goes to the police or says anything. Like they just kind of let him get away with it, which is, that's one way of going about things. I mean, they're rich.
They don't have to worry about it,
Yeah. So, and then he keeps her body under his bed instead of the dog. Grandma has sort of figured out what's going on, so Grandma goes to the priest and asks the priest to do an exorcism. And so the scene where he fights the priest, that's the exorcism. In a movie from Hong Kong, exorcisms are done with kung fu. So his thing is, well, if you splash him with eagle's blood, it will get rid of the devil fetus, but it will also kill the kid. And so she's like, well, no, you have to try to like do an exorcism or try to save him because I don't want my grandson to die. And so he's like, well, okay, I'll try, but like if push comes to shove, like I'm gonna use the eagle blood on the devil fetus. And so he tries to, and it doesn't work. And he's like, why didn't it work? And so it turns out that Grandma switched the blood. because grandma didn't want her grandson to die. But so then the priest gets it instead. And then he comes back home, and he starts having it out with the older brother, who has a sword now, and is, he's very good at kendo, so he's a good sword fighter. But Grandma, while they're fighting, Grandma brings the eagle's blood downstairs, and the girlfriend coats his sword in eagle's blood, and he uses it to fight his possessed brother, and eventually kill him with some really choice special effects that they used for that movie. It's something, man. So yeah, that was movie number 2. I was totally unaware of that film until I saw it on Saturday, and I gotta say it was pretty good. I don't know that I could give it a rating or anything.
Right. It's a little like I had heard of it from some of the same people I heard about, like Ricky O from.
It has some Ricky O vibes for sure.
Yeah, it's not a good movie, but it's bad in a way that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I've never seen the whole thing, but I've just seen like some of the more choice, weird special effect clips.
Yeah. So movie number 3 was Amityville 2: The Possession.
Uh-huh.
And the best way that I can categorize Amityville 2: The Possession is like, excuse me. Imagine if Lifetime tried to make a ripoff of The Exorcist. Like, that's what Amityville 2: The Possession is.
Sounds like a hell of a time.
It's so weird. And, like, come for the incest, but stay for the lead actor who plays the priest, just, like, fully committing. Like he's gonna win a fucking Oscar for this shit, Like, that's how committed he is to this priest role. Which is real good in its own way. But yeah, so Amityville 2: The Possession takes place in Amityville, New York, as I'm sure you could imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And a family, the patriarch of which is Paulie from the Rocky movies, moves into the Amityville house, and my favorite thing about this movie, actually, is that the ghost has, like, no fucking chill whatsoever. Like, they move in, and that fucking night, the ghost is already, like, covering the walls in satanic graffiti. Like there's no build-up in this movie. The ghost is just fucking up their lives. No, this ghost is not. It's not here to fuck around. This ghost is here to fuck with these people's lives.
This ghost is not here to fuck around. This ghost is here to fuck.
Yeah, well, so the ghost eventually possesses the brother, who then fucks his sister.
Of course.
But then, like, she's kind of into it. So, like, later she tries to, like, fuck him again. But he's already, like, starting to mutate into, like, a personification of the demon thing. So he, like, doesn't want her to see him because, like, his face is bubbling and melting off and shit. So he, like, turns her away. But, like, it's something. And then he kills his whole family, which you would think is a spoiler, but that's like the halfway point of the movie. And the rest is like the exorcism part and like a courtroom drama. And like I said, it's very Lifetime. It's again, like, oh, finally the tumult calmed down and the small village regained its usual tranquility. The gravekeeper never told his bravery to others. He kept his quiet life in the corner of the cemetery. One day the village people came over and said to him, "Thank you." You're welcome, villagers. Yeah, so So that one is a pretty weird movie. Movie number 4 was by far the worst of the bunch. Movie number 4 was The Sender. Have you heard of this movie?
Nope.
Okay, me neither. It's one of those movies that, like, have you ever seen a movie like on like, I think you and I are old enough to remember, like, you ever just like see a random movie on cable? Like, you ever see a movie and you watch the movie and you're like, that movie is doing like a budget, rip-off version of this other movie, but then you find out later, like, no, the other movie that you think this movie is a rip-off of actually came out after this movie, and then you start questioning, like,
everything.
Not everything, but I'm sitting here and I'm like, did Wes Craven see The Sender and, like, it inspired A Nightmare on Elm Street in some way? Because it's like a bad Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, I feel like there's like probably plenty of movies that were about, like, people dying in their dreams or whatever.
Well, so this one's a little different, right? So this one is it's so this kid, who's played by an actor you would definitely recognize, but you probably haven't seen him this young in anything, and I can't remember his name. It's like Zelko Ivanek or something like that. Like, he's one of the That Guy actors.
Mm-hmm.
And he's bald now and has been for many years. But in this movie came out in 1982, so 36 years ago he was young with a full head of hair. And the whole movie I was like, who is that actor? This title screen rules, by the way. I'm like, who is that actor, right? Like, who is this guy? Because I definitely recognize him. And that's who it was. But the deal is, he's a sender. So he's a like a telepath or a...
He's a mailman?
No, kind of. He's Carl Malone. He can send out, like, psychic vibes, basically.
Send out an SOS to the world.
Yes. Okay, so the joystick moves. The A button fires. Does the B button do a bomb? Oh, the B button does a bomb. It's brilliant. I like the cluster bomb. Let's do that. So he has amnesia. He ends up at a mental hospital, and his psychiatrist starts having these... They're not nightmares. That's a pretty impressive scaling effect when you respawn. Because she's not asleep. She's awake. But, like, he's having nightmares, and he's sending his...
I see.
his, like, visions to her, because he's the sender. And so, and, like, it has the dude who played Belloc in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he's, like, one of the other psychiatrists. He wants to give the kid electroshock therapy. Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. It's possible that the time had something to do with it, because this was movie number 4 of a 7-movie affair, so I believe this one started somewhere around 3:30 in the morning.
The social gamer says that the gameplay audio is a little low.
Gameplay audio is a little low. Okay. I can't pause because this is arcade hardware, but once I have an opportunity, I will nudge the gameplay volume up a little bit. Yeah, I can boost that a little. But I have to go over to the computer to do it. Also, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be playing, so that might just be a thing to keep in mind for tomorrow night. Or the next time I do a stream with the Neo-Geo. Yeah, man, again, this is at the sort of the latest hour. Now, I slept. I took like a 5-hour nap before I went to this, which is, at that point, I guess I'm just sleeping. I just went to sleep for 5 hours before I went to this marathon. So this is the only movie that I, like, sort of nodded off a little bit during. But it is just very slow. It's not weird enough to be super like there's a couple of sequences that are like pretty good. There's so the Belloc from Raiders does end up giving him electroshock therapy, and he just like amplifies all of the other patients' delusions, like to the point where they seem like real, like super, like the way that the movie communicates them to us is like they basically show us all the other patients like fully experiencing, whatever their like kind of issue is. Like there's one dude who's got like, so he doesn't believe he's still in Vietnam, but he believes that the Vietnam War is still going on. And he says he's faking his delusions so that they'll keep him in the mental hospital so they won't send him back to Vietnam, which of course by that point had been over for 10 years. Right. So he like, he starts like experiencing like Vietnam, like a very intense Vietnam flashback and that kind of stuff. When he's and the coolest thing about the sequence is the sender, like he lifts up and throws around everybody who's in the electroshock therapy room with him. Mm-hmm. So he like flings Belloc through like a plate glass window, and he like lifts up these nurses like and flings them into the ceiling and all this kind of stuff, which is like pretty cool visuals, and like it's all done with practical effects. So it's like harnesses or whatever they were doing to lift these people up to the ceiling and stuff, and that's pretty cool. But for the most part, the dream sequences aren't especially compelling. It moves at a snail's pace. It's not very scary. I wouldn't recommend it. It was really the only total dud of the marathon. Like, I don't know that I would watch Amity.
Demon fetus,
No, devil fetus. Devil fetus. Yeah, no, they can't all be devil fetus for sure. And like Amityville 2 that's a movie that I'm unlikely to ever watch again, but like, I'm kind of glad I saw it because one, it's like a mid-80s like big studio horror movie that goes for like murdering children and incest, which it's not like a trashy exploitation film. Like it's like a studio, I think. I'm pretty sure it was like a studio jam. That's like there's some sister fucking and like a 6-year-old gets shot with a shotgun. So like, again, not a great movie by any stretch, but like
stuff going on.
There's some stuff going on. The Sender, there ain't really much going on in The Sender. And that's fine because the movie after that was a new movie, which you don't usually get in these kind of affairs. Like in my past experiences with these kind of marathons, I've gotten new restorations of movies. A couple of years ago, Kurt and I saw the new restoration of Suspiria, which is also a longer cut that maybe had been available before. I'm not sure. But I hadn't seen in that type of setting. I had never seen a new movie before. So the new movie was Blood Quantum, and I didn't know this when I saw it. But apparently, blood quantum is the term that is used for how you determine if someone is able to claim Native American or First Nations lineage and like live on a reservation. There's a blood quantum, an amount of like you must be this much Native American. Yeah. So I didn't know that going in. The movie makes a lot more sense. The title makes a lot more sense with the movie once you know that. So it was made by Native American writer, director, editor. He wrote, directed, edited, and then it has an almost entirely it's a Canadian movie, so I'll say First Nations, almost entirely First Nations cast, and the deal is with the blood quantum. It was the first interesting take. So this was a almost U.S. premiere. It played at the Brooklyn Film Festival a few hours before we saw it. But it was the first interesting zombie movie I had seen in quite a while. And it has some stuff to say. And it also has some really fun gore effects and gore shots, and there's a really great use of a chainsaw. I don't want to say too much because I think people. I don't want to say too much because, again, literally, I was part of the second audience in the United States to see the film, and so talking. I know you don't mind spoilers, but talking about oh, well, this is if somebody wants to see
this
it.
far into the stream and is interested in this obscure movie is probably pretty low. But
Right. Well, I don't know. I mean, sure.
If it's not necessary to talk about the movie, then there's no point.
Yeah. So it's yeah, it does some pretty interesting stuff with zombies and sort of what you can do with that, and it takes place in Canada on an Indian reservation in 1981. And sort of the main character is the chief of police for the reservation. And in fact, he might be the only cop. There's a dispatcher as well, but
yeah.
And it just sort of follows a zombie outbreak, and then it does the slight time jump thing where it's okay, the outbreak happened, and what's next, and that's where it gets pretty interesting, is when you get to the what's next part. But I know there are people who are super sensitive to spoilers, so I don't want to say much more than that. But if you're interested in zombie movies and
I wish that the internet as a whole would be as sensitive to racism and stuff as the spoilers.
Right. Well,
one of those things makes the discussion more interesting, and one of those things makes
sucks.
Total turd.
Yeah. Well, once we log off here, I'll tell you.
Like
what's
I said,
up,
most of the time it's not if it's not necessary to discuss the movie.
I mean, it's again, I think that part of what makes it interesting is it's almost part of the premise. I don't really think it's a spoiler because it's pretty early in the movie, but I know people are weird about that shit. So, again, since it's such a new movie, I don't want to say much, but it was good. I'll say that. It was a zombie movie, and it was good, and I think zombies are so fucking played out at this point that that's kind of an accomplishment, to be perfectly honest. But the sixth movie was probably my favorite of the movies I hadn't seen, which is all of them except Halloween 3. And of the movies I had not seen, it was the one that I really thought did I just blow myself up with my bomb? This is not a super. I'm just kind of playing it because we're still talking about these movies, but this is not a very good shoot 'em up.
Well, not only that, but is this supposed to be Halloween, spooky stuff in this? I thought maybe by the title there was a Grim Reaper.
No. I think it's just. I guess is this World War II-ish, kinda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can switch to King of the Monsters or Mutation Nation.
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that
the title screen.
This is not what I had expected based on what we saw in the
Ghost pilots. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I expected these. Yeah, to be manned by ghost pilots, or the planes to be ghosts, or I don't know what I was expecting, but I was expecting more than this.
Yeah. So, yeah, the movie after Blood Quantum was Sugar Hill, which I feel like is something that is right up your alley if you've never seen it.
I've heard the name, I think. But...
So, 1974 blaxploitation zombie revenge movie. So we have a club owner who is killed by a white gangster who wants to buy his club. He doesn't want to sell, so this white gangster kills him. And his girlfriend...
Okay. I was thinking of the 90s Wesley Snipes movie.
Different Sugar Hill.
But it's not the same thing.
No, not at all.
That I have seen.
The woman's...
Not very good.
The woman's name is Sugar Hill in this one. Her boyfriend is killed by this white gangster and his mostly white crew. And so she is from there. The movie takes place in New Orleans, but she is from apparently like a relatively well-off black family in New Orleans, and they had a pretty good-sized house on the bayou at one point. That's kind of fallen a little bit into disrepair, but it's still there. And they had a voodoo priestess who lived with them. So she goes to the voodoo priestess to make a deal with Baron Samedi to get revenge for her
Well, I can tell you right now
boyfriend.
That sounds like a bad idea.
Well, let me tell you, one of the things I actually quite like about it is that it turns out to be a very good idea, because she definitely... So I'm not worried about spoilers on a movie that came out 45 years ago. She 100% gets away with it and really suffers no ill effects that we ever see. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the movie. Like, she makes a deal with Baron Samedi. He provides some resurrected slaves, whose bodies were casually discarded into the bayous, in the swamps. And he resurrects them to be her servants, and she fucking kills a bunch of gangsters with zombies, and it's fucking rad. And I can't remember the name of the actress who plays Sugar Hill, but she is smoking hot. And the guy who plays Baron Samedi he like tags along for the ride the whole time, and like is assisting with the revenge killings, and the actor who played him is just like loving life. He's having a complete blast playing this part. And you can kind of tell that I suspect that probably pretty much everybody in this movie had a blast making it, except maybe the people who played the zombies, because the zombies aren't like especially rotting. They're more like ghosts, really. But they have silver ping pong balls that have been cut in half for eyes, and that probably wasn't very comfortable to wear. But you know, it's a super fun movie. Blaxploitation zombie revenge, which I feel is I mean, if there's a genre that hasn't gotten enough love, it's got to be that one, right? So. That's a movie I would recommend. If you have any interest in blaxploitation films, which I know you do, you should check it out, because it's one of those movies that I really like it when I go to one of these marathons and a movie that I had been meaning to watch like comes up on the roster. You know, it's like that's one that that movie came up in Horror Noir, which is a documentary about sort of the history of not black horror, but black people in the United States, particularly in their relationship to horror films, which is a super good documentary. It's on, I think it's a Shudder exclusive. But it has interviews with, so it's based on a book that was written by a black woman, academic, like a film scholar. I think she's a PhD in like film studies. And she wrote this book about black horror, and they made this documentary. And the documentary just has like a ton of interviews with Keith David and Tony Todd and Ken Foray and the guy who directed Demon Knight and Tales from the Hood, whose name escapes me now. But this movie comes up in that movie, and so I'd been meaning to see it since I watched that, like at the very beginning of this year. And I had a similar experience. I think it was last year, maybe the year before, where Kurt and I went to one of the Draft House marathons, and The Changeling was one of the movies, which is one that I had been meaning to watch for like literally years and had just never gotten around to.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
So yeah, Sugar Hill is also good. Senile Coot asks, "Do we get to see some New Orleans?" Not really in that movie. I don't think that movie was actually filmed in New Orleans. It might have been, but if it was, they didn't make good use of the location. But yeah, I like that movie a lot. And then the final movie was Sleepaway Camp 2: Unhappy Campers, which is one of those movies that I think there's a debate about, how mean-spirited is this movie versus how much is it playing it straight versus how much is it supposed to be sort of winking. I don't know that there's a really coherent argument that it's playing it straight.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means in the context of that sort of movie, but
well, I mean, it's the whole thing is that Angela from Sleepaway Camp 1 has been in an asylum for 4 years, and I guess they decided she's cured of her need to just like hack people up into tiny pieces. So they let her out, and she gets a job under an assumed name. Still Angela, but like Angela Smith or whatever. She's a counselor at a summer camp now instead of a camper. And it's extremely on the nose in terms of, she talks about like, she only kills the bad kids. Which, the whole thing in the 80s was, Jason only kills the kids who smoke weed, and Freddy only kills the kids who have sex, and and that, this, that, and the other. So it just gets very on the nose with that about like, the moralizing to the point that it is, again, I feel like it's impossible to read it as anything other than satire, because it's so on the nose. And then at the end, she just starts killing everybody, and in fact, by the end, she has killed everybody at the camp. Which is pretty fantastic, actually. And it's not a great movie, but it has some pretty fun moments. It's got some pretty good kills. There's some unfortunate transphobic sort of stuff at the beginning. Not super terrible in terms of what was out there in the 80s as far as that type of stuff went, but there's some like kind of throwaway comments about like, oh, well, it turned out that she was a dude, and
that's why she's
blah,
evil.
blah, blah. Yeah, not quite that on the nose about it, but just like there's a lot of sort of misgendering, which I mean, it was 87 or 88, so I guess that's sort of to be expected, but it's still not a great look. But overall, it's fun enough. Yeah, that was the marathon. So that was 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. That I did that. And I was sort of moderating my horror movie intake this month so far because I really was like, you never know with these sort of mystery deals, and I hate to rewatch something. In fact, the girl who was ahead of me in the line to get into the theater, because they aligned everybody up outside, beforehand and made sure the theater was clean and ready to go, and the last showing ended, so people got there and it was sold out in advance, so people got there early to get good seats and everything. And the girl ahead of me was like, oh, I just watched Halloween 3, and I was kind of like, I mean, I didn't say anything to her, but I was like, that probably wasn't a great idea, because the advertising for this whole thing was extremely Halloween 3 inspired, to the point where like it was pretty obvious that was the movie they were going to show. They didn't announce any of the movies, but like they didn't need to announce that one, and I really wanted to avoid that. It's not super fun. I mean, it can still be fun, but it's just like, it's kind of a bummer when it's like, oh, cool, I'm watching this movie that I literally just watched last week. Like, I don't really. And we could come and go as we pleased, I guess. But, I mean, where was I going to go at 3:30 in the morning if they showed a movie I just watched? I guess I could walk home and take a nap. Yeah. But
That's about it.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun, and I was really glad that I hadn't seen 6 of the 7 movies, and now some movies that I really want to rewatch before the end of this month that I haven't watched in a little while. But I did watch The Black Cat. I think we talked about this the other night. I watched The Black Cat on TCM the other day. The first Hammer Dracula is on TCM on Thursday this week, and I'm gonna watch that because man, Christopher Lee as Dracula, and I think this month I'm gonna watch The Exorcist 3 director's cut version.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't have the exorcism at the end and stuff. I'm thinking I'm going to do that. But wow, it's 11 o'clock already, so I am actually, I think, and this game isn't that good, so I think I'm going to call it. But thanks everybody for coming and hanging out and everything, and there'll be more Neo-Geo streams in the future, and we'll be doing something else tomorrow night. I don't know what yet, but thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you then.